On today's episode, we have got a special guest. And when I say special, I am really, really excited. I think this is going to be a two-part series because the amount of questions that I have to drill into today, talking all things fashion, because clearly I'm an expert, how we as a society view fashion, and I want to intersect it into money and the planet and the people. If you're new here, welcome. But if you are a financially fierce old timer, you'll know this is absolutely my jam. And so today I'm delighted to have Kat Halliday, who is the ethical fashion lead from Baptist World Aid. Welcome.
Hey Jess, it's great to be here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So we are talking what you do, what we as regular normal people need to know, what we should think about. I'm going to throw in some money thoughts and ideas. Today we're talking fashion. As someone who doesn't see myself as a fashion expert, I feel it will be fascinating, but I think we're going to talk about the systems and the structures and the things that we as consumers need to know about. So strap yourself in, grab yourself a tea, coffee, wine, whatever it is that you would like, because we're going to dig into Kat's expertise to talk about clothing. This is a podcast for everyone that wants to learn how to make fierce and bold choices with their money. We'll talk about how to shape your money mindset, investing for your future, your spending habits, the good and the bad, plus how to achieve your financial goals, and most of all, how to be financially fierce. I'm a financial educator and I want to empower you to be more in control of your money and build the financial future that you want. I run the Greenhouse Money Growing Program, and you can find details of that in the podcast show notes. My name is Jessica Brady. It's time to get financially fierce. So Kat, I think it's important we start by doing a little bit of a background, origin story, if you will. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about tell us about the Baptist World Aid Ethical Fashion Team.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Great question. Baptist World Aid is an international aid and development organisation. We partner with communities to help them flourish and fight poverty. And part of that is helping Aussies fight the systems of injustice that might be keeping people in poverty and that we might be a part of. And so that's where the ethical fashion stuff comes in. We've been working for over a decade to create a fashion system that's a bit fairer on people and planet. So we assess companies on how they're treating workers and the environment in their supply chain. We give them a score out of 100, and that's a great resource for consumers to understand where their favourite brands sit against their peers, and also companies like to get a bit competitive and try and improve year on year with themselves and with their peers as well.
Yeah, amazing. And so you have got a report, an ethical fashion report, which has come out in the past and something that I think is to be enormously proud of because it is fantastic, a fantastic resource. But what are you doing differently this year?
Yeah, so we create that ethical fashion report every second year now. That just gives companies a little bit more time to make improvements based on what we've found in our big assessment of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And in the year off, we always try and give people resources to progress the conversation about ethical fashion and about the part that we play. In the past, that's been an ethical consumer report or something like that. This year, we've created a podcast series called Behind the Barcode. We're unpacking the truth about ultra-fast fashion. So that's the likes of Shein and Temu asking questions about what is that business model? How did we get here? Again, what is it doing to people and planet? And do we like where we're headed with the fashion industry?
I am so excited for this podcast series because I think for a lot of people, they want to do good, and it can feel big and burdensome and overwhelming. And so to be able to listen to something that explains it in a way that makes sense, that helps give people a framework or an understanding of how to do something that doesn't mean you have to give up your life as you know it or God forbid, never wear clothes again. I'm sure that that's not what you're calling for in this podcast series. But it's just, it feels practical and tangible because I think for a lot of people, the problem feels so big. It's I don't even know. Can I make a difference? And the answer, of course, in my opinion, is always, yeah, of course we can. It's just all of us doing what we can. And so to have a digestible content series that brings in different experts, I'm really looking forward to it being released. And we should talk more about sort of where people go to find that. But can we dig into some of the points that I think are really important for us to consider? You kind of talked already about this idea around ultra fast fashion. And I think the terminology that you used is it's kind of this magnification or, fast fashion magnified. What are the signs? Like, what is ultra fast fashion? And as consumers, like, how do we know if a brand is doing that? Like, if they've crossed the line into that state?
Yeah, in reality, it probably is a spectrum, right? Like we have fashion, fast fashion, and ultra fast fashion existing kind of side by side, and people will draw the lines differently as to where we've crossed over into ultra fast. But there are some features that I think are key giveaways. So the first one being that ultra fast fashion is really dynamic. So they're turning around products from concept to being listed on their website or app in a matter of days, where their predecessors were doing that, in a few weeks or months. So that they're able to jump on a cultural moment or jump on a social media trend quickly enough to be relevant. And they're doing that with thousands of products every day just to see what works. So rather than putting in an order for, 4 months' time, I want 2 million of these T-shirts, they're saying to a factory, can you get me 200 of these T-shirts tomorrow? We'll see how it goes and we'll scale up from there. So their business model and their supply chain is quite different because it's really localized to that production site really around China. So they have their pattern making, their manufacturing, their headquarters, their modelling all really in the same place, and they ship straight to consumers from there. So they're really agile and, as I said, dynamic.
And it's funny because in some ways you can look at that and go, dynamic and agile,
It's a lot of buzzwords.
Yeah, it's a lot of buzzwords and fast to market and, able to test case situations. So when they're not producing 2 million. So why is it bad?
Yeah, I think they would kind of argue we're just doing what everyone else was trying to get right. Like we've just cracked the balance of affordability and novelty and agility, and everyone else wants to do this, but we got there first. But in reality, they have gotten there by cutting a lot of corners. Their timelines and their price tags, those margins are so razor thin that they can't pay their workers enough to feed their families, to put food on the table, send their kids to school. And there are some cases where they're not even earning enough from their sales to cover their own marketing spend that got consumers through the door. But they're just building this dominance and dependence in the market that we know we can go to these sites for absolutely any hyper-specific need. And they'll build those prices up over time, build that dependence and kind of addiction, which is a really interesting model.
I think it is an addiction. And sort of looping this into money because, I think... as a money podcast, I probably should. I saw some research, and I don't think it's new research, but it's still alarming. Like, Australians are some of the highest consumers of fashion globally. And I think it was like we buy on average more than one piece of clothing a week.
Yeah, so I got to sit down with Ainsley Simpson, and she's the CEO of Seamless, which is our product circularity scheme in Australia. And they do a great piece of benchmarking research on our fashion consumption every year. And the data out of Seamless said that we're consuming 55 new pieces per year, which is more than one a week. I certainly don't need that many new pieces of clothing.
You have one body.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. We're kind of neck and neck, sometimes just above, sometimes just below the US, which is really staggering.
Yeah, and I think, I want to talk about social media in a moment, but if we just look at it from a monetary perspective, that's a huge amount of money that someone is deploying to things that are perhaps poorly made because they're produced so quickly. And so then it becomes this vicious cycle of, well, the trend's out, I've got to buy the new latest thing, but also it's broken or it's shite, really, and so it's not lasted or stood the test of time. And I think it's predatory, but we'll get into this. I just think the cost is actually an interesting concept because there's the cost and then there's the cost, which I have no doubt we'll explore throughout this podcast. But we are spending so much money to become versions of ourselves that we want other people to see us as, and forget everyone external to you for a moment. Forget the planet, forget the people, forget everything. I think we have to actually recognize that marketers have gotten so clever at getting deep into our insecurities and telling us that we are but a purchase away from being the people that we want to be seen as long as we buy the next thing. And I have been thinking about this, and I haven't done anything with it. Now, for those of you who are new, welcome. And I am certainly not anyone who you would say is a fashionista by any stretch of the imagination, but I have decided that I am quite good at picking fashion trends.
Oh, great.
So if you want, like, what is going to be the next it thing, I think I've got you. And I think I need to start making time-stamped videos. Not that I'm clever in any stretch or have some sort of, like, creative vision of where the fashion world is heading. I just know whatever's in today, the exact opposite is going to be coming in soon. So if it's skinny jeans that are in, which are not at the moment, I can be damn sure that the next wave is going to be the exact opposite, so that everything that you have is no longer the cool thing. And then guess what's going to happen after we get all these wide leg pants that we all, everyone's now seeming to wear? My next fashion prediction is that we're going to go back.
They'll be back.
They'll be back. It's like gold has had its moment. And I predicted about a year ago, I was like, I reckon silver's coming any day now. Now everyone, not everyone, some people.
Back on silver.
My mother gift. I have to say, I come to you today. Let's just do, is it a fit check? Is that what?
Yeah,
let's do a fit check. My mother gifted me these earrings. She wanted people to know that she hadn't worn them first. Not that I think anyone cares at all. I'm wearing a jumper from my friend Madeline, who is a stylist. That came from Savers, was $13. I'm wearing secondhand Scarlet, see clearly all the fashion terminology, Scanlon and Theodore jeans from What We Wore, which is a secondhand consignment business. And I only clocked this morning as we were outside that I was like, oh, and my handbags from Savers.
I'm in the uniform for Baptist World
I'm
Aid.
like dressed for the occasion. But so many of my clothes are secondhand because of all of the things that we're going to talk about today. And I've just decided, yeah, I like what I like and I want to wear when I want to wear, but I'm not subscribing to the idea that my identity or my worth or my success markers are based on whether I'm wearing the latest shit that whatever Instagram influencer is telling me makes me cool. I've just decided I don't care. And it is easy to say that. I actually think it's quite a journey to get to that. And I think for a lot of people, and also we live in a world where we're judged. We are judged by what we look like, whether we like it or not, especially women. And so it's this dance of, I don't want to go on stage looking like my pretend farmer self, which I would absolutely do if I could. But it's taken me a long time. It's probably been 10 years to get to a point where I'm pretty much exclusively secondhand. I went to a photo shoot a month ago and saw my friend Madeline, who's a stylist, and she'd got some clothes for me, including this jumper. And I said to her, oh my God, I haven't actually been shopping since I saw you last. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I haven't bought any clothing since I saw you last. She's like, you've bought no clothing. I was like, no. She goes, Jess, I saw you last year. This was like in September of this year. And I was like, oh, yeah, right. I don't think I've bought clothes this year. She's like, what are you doing over there? I'm like, I'm just existing and I'm surviving and I'm doing okay. And so if we're spending a lot of money on clothes, I think the question to ask yourself is, why? And if it's you genuinely love it, we're probably going to give you some things to think about on how to do that with more understanding of the world that we're living in.
Yeah.
But if you know that you're buying because you're emotional, because you're getting sucked into the latest it thing, it's about how do we decouple our worth as a human from what society tells us we need to look like. And that is a hard road, but hugely important. So after my long monologue and tangent, let's actually get back on track. Welcome, Kat.
I think it's so great to hear about your sort of secondhand shopping and the way that you favour that. And I have been thinking, what these ultra-fast fashion brands do really well is actually giving you what you need for kind of concurrent micro trends. There's those really specific things like mob wife aesthetic or tomato girl or these things that are so specific and fleeting, but they are happening side by side. And the op shop also gives you different people's clothing that therefore is different styles. So whatever style you're trying to lean into or experiment with, I think there is actually a great parallel to say there's great diversity at an op shop as well as on these ultra fast fashion sites. So let's just look there instead and go secondhand.
What the hell is tomato girl? What are you talking about? I mean, I clearly follow all the wrong things to even try to be influenced. But what?
I think it's like a lot of blush and like a little bandana, and you're going on a picnic and you're feeling a little Italian. Oh. It's cute. If I were to favour a trend, I liked that one when I saw it on my feed. Okay, well, I've got my phone in the room, so no doubt it's listening to me, and I'm suddenly going to be getting tomato girl updates. And I think that that's true. Like we now have so much choice, definitely too much choice. It's important to remember that the breadth of that actually gives you
the ability to go, okay, cool, I love that trend, or I really like the aesthetic or whatever. I don't have to buy it. Like, there are options.
Yeah.
I also got a sewing machine for my birthday, which I'm embarrassed to admit was in February, because I had this idea that if I like something and I can't find it, I'm going to see if I can make it.
Yeah.
It has sat on my dining room floor unceremoniously. It's now, October? But I've been given, a heap of friends gifted me secondhand vintage material, but I'm also a bit scared to use it. It's beautiful. That's what I'm scared of, because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I think
some
I just
practice tablecloths or something to work on.
That's a great idea. Or some old sheets from the op shop. But I think social media is a huge would you agree social media is a huge part of this
Absolutely.
problem? Or it's really changed how we buy clothes?
I think particularly with these brands, it's also changing how clothes are made. So not only are they marketing to us on social media, it's great for them if we're spending more time on these apps because we're seeing more ads, but they are actually pulling huge amounts of data, particularly from TikTok, but across our social media presence, not only to market to us, but to decide what to make. And that's quite a shift from fast fashion to ultra fast fashion. So they're going, everyone kind of liked or responded to or paused on this reel for a bit longer when X celebrity was wearing this piece of clothing. Let's see how it goes if we release a style like that. And so it's quite a different feature to fast fashion, where their eyes are more on the runway, their timelines are a bit longer, and they're thinking about, what's going to work in a few months' time. It's that kind of reactive, responsive model that they're working with.
And then it's also, so that's obviously from the manufacturer side, or whatever they're called, like, the brand side, where they're looking dynamically at, like, what are people sticking to, what do people seem to like, and how do we get stuff out as fast as humanly possible. But then there's also, I think, from our side of, like, I think a lot of people want to make sure that they don't, God forbid, they wear the same outfit more than once.
Yeah.
There's this idea of, like, I have to be seen a certain, our bestest, most beautifulest self on social media, which I've clearly never embraced. And this whole idea that, this outfit repeating business is no good. Why do we, like, I don't know whether you're the right person to answer this, but, like, do you agree with that? Like, we've created this idea that, like, you have to constantly be in new things to be admired.
Especially, I think, among teenagers, and then if you're going to, like, formal events or weddings, there's a real culture of not re-wearing the dress for the last wedding or the outfit for the last party, and, really wanting the novelty. But there's a few pieces of clothing that you feel great in, and that's so sad if you can only post in it once and then it's hit its expiry date. You should just keep wearing those things that you love.
Over and over again. I'm actually emceeing a awards night at the end of October, and I emceed it last year in one particular dress, and it kind of relates to the event that I'm emceeing. And I was like, it is such a good dress for that particular event. I don't care. I'm wearing it again. I'm wearing the same dress to the same event with the same role. I just have no shame.
Yeah.
I think we actually need to do much more praising of people when we see them repeat outfits, or when they just do what they want. And they don't have to subscribe or prescribe to a very narrow, we have such a narrow scope of, like, what's in or what's out, or whether you're cool or not. And, like, we can sit here and be like, you don't have to be cool or whatever. At a human neuroscience level, actually, we are wired to want to be liked by our people. We're tribal. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I've done a lot of research on this recently for a different project. And actually, our want to be liked in a broader context of society is actually linked a lot to safety. Because if you are you want to be the person that they save, or, that is told about something. And so it's really annoying that our brains are wired to want to be liked by people, because actually it keeps us safe in a community environment. And this mechanism has now been sort of sucked into this very dangerous, I think, particularly for younger women. And I have, the reason I'm sort of labouring on this is I've given financial advice to so many younger women, and many of them have told me, and a lot of the LGBTIQ plus community, and within that I'm talking specifically about a lot of gay young men that I worked with, I've had many, many, many conversations with those people that were extraordinarily emotional, where they were like, I'm just buying to try to fit in. And I'm like, how can we use your money to do the things that you want to do that actually make you happy and realize, and Emma Edwards, who I love, said something on one of my Evergreen Money Club interviews a while ago, and she said, do not outsource your identity to consumerism.
That's great.
And I was like, holy shit, I'm borrowing that. That is what so many of us do. We outsource our identity, who we are, to items of clothing. When you sit back and think about it, you're like, this is insane. So when we talk about ethical fashion, what does Baptist World Aid mean by ethical fashion?
There are, I think, different features that some people will pull into their definition of ethical fashion. For some, it might be all about animal rights. For some, it might be all about, I don't know, modesty or self-expression, and that's kind of tied into ethics. When Baptist World Aid talks about ethical fashion, we're really focused on the supply chain, particularly on the garment worker and the environment that's been impacted. So we believe that all people deserve to live and work in a healthy environment with dignity. And I would say that's not a particularly groundbreaking belief, but we're just matching up and seeing how are these fashion companies treating their workers? Are they aligning to that standard or are they hindering it? So it's things like, are they monitoring the chemicals that they're putting into their clothes? Are they polluting local waterways? Are they empowering the women in their supply chain, which is the vast majority of garment workers? Are they paying them enough? Are the factories safe? Just asking those kind of questions of safety and dignity.
How bad is it?
It's not great. We assess companies and give them a score out of 100, and in 2024, the whole industry's average score was 31 out of 100. Which is far from a pass mark. There are things that every company really should be getting right by this point, just their own policies, their own internal practices that allow their suppliers to work more ethically. Then there are things that are slower and harder to make progress on, and that would be things like a living wage. The wage is set by, a country's minimum wage and what a factory's working towards, and there are multiple companies buying from the same factory. So that takes more problem solving and more collaboration, but it's so important and so basic to get right.
Let's drill into that. Let's say you've never heard anything about any of this before, and you go to Kmart and you pick up some T-shirts for $3. I think I saw on the TV that you can get T-shirts for $3 over the weekend. I could be wrong.
My coffee always costs more than that now. It's kind of warped these supply chains that we run in.
I was like, who's making profit on a $3 T-shirt? So let's have a think about that. And, you're a time-poor parent. Your child is constantly, getting into mischief and constantly ruining their clothes, or insert whatever there. When you talk about toxins and the pollution and the environmental impact, and then this concept of a living wage, what do you mean? Are you saying that the toxins the chemicals that they use in garment making are in some companies or in some places really unhealthy for the people who work in those factories and make them sick, and or get, the byproduct or whatever it is gets washed away into the environment and it makes the environment sick, just for simplification purposes? Is that right?
Yeah, and I would add, sometimes can make the consumer sick. They're exposed to unsafe levels of chemicals, potentially in the way their clothes have been dyed or washed as well.
And let's talk about this living wage concept. What's a living wage? What do you mean by that?
So a living wage is just enough to meet your basic needs. Put food on the table, send your kids to school, put away a bit for a rainy day. It's not a luxury, but it's often more than a minimum wage in the countries that our clothes are made in. And it's really nothing special. It's just what a person needs. But in our research, in the Ethical Fashion Report, only 2% of companies were paying the workers at their final stage factory a living wage. So that's not even the whole supply chain then. And certainly not ultra-fast fashion brands either.
2%?
Yeah. I think when you hear that number, you can think that, it must be too hard. Baptist World Aid might have set the standard too high. But it is, I have to stress this, it's just the basics. It's not going out on shopping sprees. It's not investing in luxury brands or, rental investment properties. It's, a roof over your head. And workers are in such a position of vulnerability if they can't look for a job that's safe or a job that doesn't involve elements of exploitation or forced labour, if they can't skip a day's wages because that means no food or, pulling their kids out of school.
Holy dooly. So these are people who work in factories in, no doubt, really tough conditions. I can't imagine, by the sounds of them, not getting a living wage. I can't imagine it's this beautiful air-conned environment with, ergonomic work settings. They are making garments all day long. If we actually think about, me and my white-collar cushy job, that is hard, I would imagine, physical labour. It's probably long hours. I would imagine they don't have a huge amount of benefits, but we're actually saying from a wage perspective, that does not meet the standards for them to be able to. So working full-time, long hours, predominantly women in the garment industry, as you said, barely enough to survive. It's like modern paid, it's like employed, I don't know, can we use the word slavery? I don't think that's the right word, but it's awful.
A lot of it would be a real vulnerability or risk factor for modern slavery, and some of it might be, on the edge or just fitting that definition of modern slavery. And actually in ultra-fast fashion supply chains, there's an interesting feature that's kind of exacerbating this. So workers are very often paid by a piece rate, particularly in ultra-fast fashion brands. So that means they're paid per piece that they make rather than an hourly rate or a salary.
Okay.
They're saying, I am going to pay you this much for every pair of jeans that you make. I think you can make 100 pairs of jeans in a day, but that estimate is really overstated. So in reality, they can make 50 pairs of jeans, and they could, in theory, if they worked like a machine, get a living wage, but they just can't actually produce that much. So they're always undercut, and they're always rushing, and I think that really ties to the decline in quality that we've seen, particularly in these ultra-cheap brands. That's tied to how workers are paid. Yeah.
Of course, because if you're getting paid per piece and you know that you can only do half of what they think you can do, then you're a race against the clock to try to get as many done as possible so you can earn as much as possible to be able to put food on your table.
Yeah.
And I think that there can be, like even just listening to you, I feel quite guilty. Not as someone who consumes a lot, but, I learned a number of years ago from someone who I had come and speak at one of my events. He basically said, if you see the word made in Bangladesh on any of your clothing items, that they have not been paid a living wage. And I just remember thinking, holy shit, I have clothes at home that say made in Bangladesh. And so, I think it is hard in a cost of living environment where people have been really challenged over the last few years. Housing in Australia is really expensive. Sometimes people feel like they feel almost like they have limited options or choice. But when you think about the idea that the impact it's having is keeping people in poverty, because that is really what it's doing.
Yeah.
I certainly, and it's fine if you don't have the same reaction as me, but I feel enormous levels of shame. What do you say to people who then feel like I do and think, oh my God, well, this is kind of all, I want to say fucked, but I don't know if I can say it. It's my show. Like this feels fucked. Like, what do we do? How do you navigate that for people who are feeling like this right now? What's your advice?
I think it's really normal to feel that. I certainly feel that. I do think there's two ways to look at it. You can say, oh my goodness, this is the system that I'm a part of. This is the journey that the clothes that I acquire have gone on. I feel ashamed. I feel guilty. I feel shocked that I'm a part of this. On the flip side, I'm an insider in a system and I'm not liking the way that it's looking, but I can make change from within. And I think that's empowering. And not every change that you make is going to be expensive or really time consuming, but small adjustments that align with your values is so empowering to live that way and to know that in small ways you're contributing to making the industry better for someone at the other end of it is really meaningful. We don't need workers to be subsidising our taste for cheap clothing, and there are ways that we can move beyond that.
I really love that because I think it makes you feel like you're taking back some level of control. Because sometimes when we see big systems like this, it can feel very disempowering and it can feel very frustrating. And one of the things that I've been quite nervous to always talk about is my relationship with buying things, because I mainly just, you were talking about a council cleanup before we started this episode. I am the person who's like out in the, it's so exciting. Love a good council cleanup. And, I wear a lot of secondhand and I try my best to look at the origin of, like, where did this thing come from? Who made this? Am I okay with the impact of that? But I think sometimes what I feel is that I have to do it perfectly or not talk about it, because if I don't do it perfectly 100% of the time, then I'm not being genuine or not living up to what I say I do. And I just think that I have had to come to and it's taken me actually years to reconcile. I don't have to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. But if we all just decide to do something slightly better as a collective, that makes enormous amounts of change. And I do think particularly in some circles, it's this idea that if you don't do it perfectly, you're going to get crucified, and that, I think people are worried to talk about it because they know that they're not perfect at doing it perfectly. And so to what you were just saying then, I think that makes me feel really great about saying you can have choice and you can decide to do things differently and be behaving differently, but don't also feel like you have to be perfect 100% of the time. I mean, we would all love to, but there's just a reality of life.
Totally.
I don't know. That gives me comfort. I don't know whether anyone else will resonate with that, but
yeah,
it's made me feel better.
When I have ethical fashion in my job title, I often compliment someone's clothing and then they'll say, oh, I got it from this brand. Oh, I don't know if they do okay in your guide, or I don't know if I should say that to you. But I don't want to model an unreachable perfection. I want everyone to just do what makes sense for them, to take one little step further in the choices that they're making and how they're participating in the system. And if I'm out here breaking my back over every decision, every thing that I need to buy or acquire, then I'm just going to model that it's unattainable for people to join me in that, and that's not my hope at all.
And I think that's what got me. It actually felt really burdensome, and I felt like this level of weight where I was like, this is so hard to change everything in my life. To be at the level I felt really overwhelmed by it. And then ironically, when I gave myself permission, if you will, to do it imperfectly, it actually became so much easier because it didn't feel like this really big problem that I had to then spend hours researching which shampoo and conditioner bar, I tried many by the way, was going to be best for me. It actually then became a bit more fun. I don't know, psychologically something inside of me changed. And so if you feel like that as well, I think for me it was quite freeing. And actually it became so much, it's funny how our brains work. It actually just became so much easier to do when the burden didn't feel like it was weighing me down.
I think baby steps is such a thing as well. I think back to when I started trying to recycle a lot better and divvy things up into the right bins and even, dropping things back to the store where I could. And at first, it was quite a conscious thing where I had to go, okay, this goes in this bin, I can take this off and that's going to go in that bin. And now I don't think about it. Now it's just a habit. And so when that was set up and working, then I was going, okay, what is the next step I'm going to take now that isn't feeling like it's occupying my brain space? So in fashion, I probably moved consciously to shopping secondhand more often. Now that's my default. So I'm shopping secondhand and also thinking about the types of fibres that I'm buying and really seeking natural fibres. And to do it all at once would have been really overwhelming. But I'm adding on year or however long it takes. When the last step feels easy and sort of second nature, then I'll look to how I can grow and take that step further in authenticity.
Which is exactly the opposite of what we are told about making change anywhere in life, also with money. And yet that is the one that works, that you start with this actually just doing one thing, something that is actually quite easy for your brain to be able to see success on. And we build Rome brick by brick and we improve over time and things get easier. So let's do a break because I think we need one. But when we come back, I want to get more into, I've got some juicy questions based on your podcast series that I'm keen to kick on into.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to moneypodcast.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help.
Okay, hey, I want to go back to something that we were just talking about in terms of, garment makers and living wages and all of the supply chain piece, especially with this ultra fast fashion, which is that is breakneck speed.
Yeah.
In the podcast series that you've done, it's mentioned that there's over 100 people that touch our clothing before it reaches us. Firstly, am I getting that right? And which stage of that do you think we don't really understand very much about?
I must say I probably couldn't name every job in those 100.
That's fine. I'm not going to ask you
But
that.
I have heard that that's a reliable picture of what's gone on in the supply chain. I think especially with ultra-fast fashion brands, we're really losing sight of the human story of our clothes. The models are AI. I bought it on an app. It looks like really cheaply made, kind of maybe by a robot, but that's not true. At every stage, there are a lot of people involved in the process, 100 people involved in the journey, in fact. So that would be, growing and harvesting the cotton, picking the bits of twig and seed out of the cotton ball. So it goes into the ginning and spinning and turns into fabric, and then the fabric gets dyed, and then it gets cut into the right pieces to be made into a T-shirt. Then there's quality assurance, then there's shipping, and then there's the retail assistant that maybe sold it to you. And that's a lot of people in that process. And as you said, that $3 T-shirt doesn't leave a lot to be divvied up across that whole chain.
No, it certainly doesn't. While you were explaining that, I just had this little moment. So my grandmother weirdly spoke Japanese, and I know a very small, obscure amount of Japanese, and I actually, because I was taught it a little bit as a child, but one of the things that she taught me, and I'm going to pronounce this so incorrectly, and I apologize in advance, is I think it's itadakimasu. Itadakimasu.
Is that what you say when you're eating food?
Yes, and basically, I don't know whether this is her white interpretation, so please don't cancel me if I've got this wrong. And if you have feedback, send it across, Jess Brady _financial advice on Insta. But basically what she used to get us to do was think about, where did this food come from? What farmers made this, and my grandmother was English, so who put it on the lorry, and who got it off the lorry, and who put it on the shelf. And it was just this really lovely way to go, wow, there were a lot of people, someone grew those peas and someone grew those potatoes and what have you. And I think as a child, it just gave me a really interesting perspective that food actually doesn't just come from the shops. And so when you were talking about that, I just had this flashback that actually that is very, very similar in terms of the things that we're buying. There is a huge amount of people that are involved. So I wonder if we need to kind of adopt more of that practice of recognizing just how far and wide that goes. And as you say, 100 people for a $3 T-shirt, what the hell? What the hell?
We were talking about outfit repeating before the break, and that's something every time I put on I've worn this top a bunch, and when I put it on and I've worn it and had it for ages, I think that's a beautiful way to honour all those people. Actually, the work of your hands was worth it because I love this and I'm going to wear it for a long time. The flip side would be your labour, and often your exploited labour, is actually not worth very much to me, and I've bought this item and I'm going to throw it away after one wear. Not that you're explicitly saying that, but to take that honour and dignity into outfit repeating in that small way, I think is beautiful.
I think that's a really nice reframe. Because we have been told for a really long time that it's shameful. It's actually, I am not only loving this, but it's actually a mark of respect of the people and the journey that the item has been on and the people that made it. So let's talk Shein, because I know we don't want to bash all of the individual companies, although they can go and check out your report from last year, correct? And there's a rating, which
Their scores are all out there.
Oh God, I was looking at some of the brands and I was like, oh my God. But let's talk on Shein for a moment. I have never purchased anything, I don't think, from Shein. So I don't really know much about them, but I think they started in 2008, but they sort of exploded during that COVID era, as far as I'm aware. Why do you think the timing, did ultra fast fashion kind of pop up around the COVID period? Why do you think that happened?
It does feel very tied to the rise of TikTok. I think influencer hauls and wanting to be seen in different things on your social media presence. Maybe it just felt like this accessible way that I could have some kind of ownership when life and the world felt kind of out of control. At least I can get a whole box of cheap, fun new clothes delivered to my door. So there were just cultural factors that were at play. Their marketing is incredibly aggressive as well and will find you everywhere.
Oh, it's going to find me now. I'm was there no better time to live in our pajamas? That was our living in pajamas era. If you wasted that on Shein fashion, I'm sorry for you, because I was just rocking around in anything that was socially unacceptable in every other time except COVID.
So Temu only entered the Australian market in 2023. And by 24, it was making $1.7 billion.
What?
Crazy.
And when I'm giggling because yesterday Glenn from the Money, Money, Money podcast shared something with me where someone called me a communist for wanting to tax billionaires more. Lol. I showed my dad last night. We had a great giggle together. You can label me whatever you want. I don't give a shit. But when we talk about companies like that, in the context of this conversation, we have to remember that this is using the labour of so many people at the bottom who without their labour, they wouldn't be able to sell anything, I wouldn't imagine. And they get so little. They can't really survive. I've seen some horrific documentaries on that. And yet the people at the top, like 1.7 billion?
Yeah.
Where the fuck does that money go? Who is profiting from this?
In that case, because they were spending so much on advertising to us, I think that was
Meta.
revenue and not profit.
Right.
They were just trying to get us hooked, but it's crazy.
But think about that. So that's 2023. So I think our inflation numbers were like 7%. So I think also the timing of that was at a point where perhaps people were like, I used to go and shop at X, Y, and Z. I literally cannot afford that at the moment. And so, these ultra cheap options just came to the fore. You can do it in your PJs at home. You don't need to leave the house. It gets delivered quickly. It's like the perfect storm to make that accessible.
And these apps and websites are so much like a casino. Like when I go on them, I just am affronted with games and spinning wheels and pop-up notifications and mystery discounts and timers on the clothing, sales, and they've implemented into their apps like the infinite scroll, like our TikTok or Instagram reels. So you'll never get to the end of a page of their, dresses or tops. And that moment of friction saying, do I want to go to page 28 of 400 of dresses might make you pause and say, I've spent enough time here. But you just don't because you don't realize how long you've been on it. So they're doing all these things that really tap into our dopamine addiction and our psychology. And that's where maybe our willpower isn't stronger than the best marketing minds behind what these brands are doing.
It's not. I don't think it's fair. Like, we are more likely to spend money when we are emotional, sad, stressed, angry. We are more likely to be marketed to of an evening because people know that that's when you're probably sitting at home, sad, stressed, or angry. And so if they have got all of their data around how to get you at the point where you are at your most vulnerable and weakest and most likely to part with money, and they're able to spend hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to get all of those practices and use them in quite a nefarious way, what hope do you have? I think the only answer is get off them.
Yeah.
Get off them. There was a point where my mother was sending me, my mum's quite spendy. Hello, Mum. She doesn't listen, but like, hello. And my family chat was constantly getting these ridiculous links about having to like get 6 friends or like sign this. Mum would text me and be like, could you please just sign up to it? You don't have to do anything. And I'm like, I did it once and then saw that spinning wheel thing and was like, this is like a casino. This is scary. And then she tried for so long to get me to do it again. And I was like, never send me this bullshit text message ever again. I'm not interacting with this. What are you buying? Anyway, and I think my whole family was just like, get off Temu. I think she became addicted to it. I think it became something
It's a common story.
Addiction. I said that because I've just spent the night at her house and I see how much stuff she has. But I think it can start as a very genuine need. We can't afford what we used to do, or I don't have time to go to the shops, or I don't have time to look, or, insert whatever, is going on. And then you just get sucked into this ulterior world. And, people have said to me, it's just so easy. Look how cheap it is. It's so easy. It's like, there's a cost.
Yeah, it's just we're not paying for it.
We are not paying for it. Is there anything that genuinely really shocked you when you produced either the podcast series or the report last year?
I think a lot of it did, but at the same time, it's these things that we kind of have intuitively known. I probably have words or some stats to put to that feeling of, I don't think it's right that clothes are this cheap, or I'm kind of dubious about the quality if I've paid this much. People do have this sense of maybe uneasiness, or maybe I feel like I've struck gold that clothes are this cheap. But I think I have more context or background to how they've been able to do this and what's going on for workers when they're operating at this business model. It's a shame that we don't have tougher legislation across different countries. I think that's really my key takeaway was these companies aren't going to change because the likes of us choose not to shop with them or we, write a few letters. I think these companies are operating at such a massive scale that we need solutions at a scale that matches. And I do think that's where our government needs to come in and put some tougher restrictions in place.
Are they doing anything?
The government?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have a Modern Slavery Act, so that's something. At least they're required to report on their risks. There's definitely a lot of ways that could be improved. What we're seeing actually is that a lot of our global neighbours have implemented an import ban on products made with forced labour, but Australia hasn't yet done that, and that's something that we'd really like to see brought across the line. And as it's harder to sell these products in Europe or in the US, very neatly, as those things got harder, the advertising spend from these companies increased in Australia. They chose not to clean up their act, but just to sell where it was easier.
Albo, what are you doing? If you could please just consider this. Because it does strike you like if this is using harmful chemicals which impact, or it sounds like the people who work there, the environment, and us potentially as consumers, if like at every level you look at this and go, whoa, this whole thing is actually bullshit, like this is crazy. The next question is like, how has this been allowed? Like, how has this been allowed? And I think it's just no one said don't, so they just did what they wanted.
Yeah.
Is that I mean, it's very simplified, but like kind of.
Yeah.
Our
government sets all governments, I guess, set the playing field. They set the minimum standard that we're expected to work to. And there's always going to be a dance of how much regulation we want in businesses and how much we want to let the market run itself. But we've seen, I think, that we need that minimum bar to be raised a bit. And we've actually made a tool to go alongside this podcast series that allows people to speak out to their MP about the issue. So we've just put 2 asks in there. We need an import ban for products made with forced labour, and we need to make a product stewardship scheme mandatory. So that's, if you brought the clothes into Australia, you need to be responsible for the end of that clothing's life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. I'd like to use this. Can we put a link to it in the show notes?
Yeah, that would be great. So you just pop in your postcode. It will give you your MP and give you a suggested email that you can send to them. You can send it straight from our website to them.
Great.
And hopefully, every MP in the country is going to get a couple of emails. They'll go to the party room and say, hey, what are we going to do about this forced labour ban? We can take it from there.
Amazing. Let's all just do that. Like we can all, as we're waiting for our coffee, either that we're going to the cafe to get or making it home, like we can, that's a really easy, simple thing where, to that point around feeling kind of overwhelmed by this crazy big system that feels huge. But actually, if a lot of people can just take, 25 seconds?
That's right.
We can take 25 seconds and feel good that we've actually tried to agitate for change. I love that. And thank you for making that simple and easy, because for people like me who have great intentions but not often, like if I had to sit and think about how am I going to word this or what am I actually looking for, that would feel...
That's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. That's really hard. I do want to touch on this though, and I frankly think anyone that thinks this may have already checked out from this episode, but who knows? What do you say to people though who are like, well, the argument is you are giving them a job, the people who are making this, and you are making clothing accessible at a time where people are finding it tough. Is there a logical, what do you say to someone who says that?
I would say that secondhand clothing, either from an op shop or even from a clothing swap with friends, is also quite accessible. May take slightly more time investment. I think we're just consuming so much more clothing and we're actually spending less on it. So 2 decades ago, I think we were spending 10 to 12% of our household income on clothing. Now we're spending 3%. So we're really not spending that much on clothing, but we're buying so much. I think we can just stop and ask ourselves, do I really need this? If I want to experiment with this new style, do I need to get it new, or could I repurpose something in my wardrobe or get it secondhand? And then in terms of giving workers jobs, it's really a question of why is a job that's so exploitative worthy of one person in one country, but it wouldn't be worthy of Australians? That's just a question of, I think, justice.
And what you mean by that is if we were producing the clothes in the same manner as they're being produced today elsewhere, that shit wouldn't fly from a regulatory perspective.
Totally.
But we turn a blind eye to it when we import clothes that have been made in those conditions.
And the system is set up so that we don't really know. I don't think it's us always choosing to turn a blind eye. It's strategically very far away from the consumer's side.
But that's what I love about the work that you've done, because you actually bring it to the forefront and you make a really complex system, because companies can also do a really good job of trying to be like, oh, look, we do this great thing, but just don't look over there because we do a million bad things. Like you've made that really simple for consumers to be able to have a good look at, or, that transparency marker. And so thank you for the work that you do, because that is overwhelming. I think I've used the word overwhelming no less than 100 times in
It's all overwhelming.
It's just a lot. Let's talk about, how do you manage this? Because I've obviously done War and Peace on how I've found this area of my life. But personally, if you're comfortable talking about this, like, how do you balance like wanting to look in whichever way you want to look and resisting being sweat? Because you are in your 20s and resisting, this whole social media wave and this new outfit every post sort of culture. Like, what's that journey been like for you?
I think my mum modelled a love of op shopping. So I've just grown up to love op shopping, and now in my work, I love it even more. And so I probably set aside a little bit more time if I need to buy something new, because I'll head out to the op shops and might not find what I'm looking for maybe the first time that I go. I had a wedding recently that I wanted a new dress for. And so a few weekends before, I was just like, I have some time, I'll head to an op shop and see if I get anything great. And I found this awesome vintage dress that I love, and I got a lot of compliments in, and I was really happy with that find. Yeah, so I think the other thing that I do is probably just set a challenge for myself, or set something external to just my own willpower, as we've talked about. So in 24, I did a challenge where I said I'm only going to buy 5 new pieces of clothing in the year. And I think that really changed my mindset about what pieces were worth taking up a place in one of those 5.
Are you worthy of one of my 5 spots?
And
Love
I think
that.
I developed this skill of just admiring clothes but not needing to acquire them. That's so beautiful. I tried that on and I felt so pretty in that. How nice. What a nice experience back on the shelf. And that's okay. Like, clothing is beautiful. You can feel great in it. You don't need to own every piece.
Such a smart way to look at it.
Stuck with me.
I love that. I love that as well, because sometimes we just think, I love it equals must have. Other than I love it, I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We're going to wrap up this episode very, very soon, but I have a couple of last questions, and I think we've touched on this, but for someone who feels like their individual impact is too small, what are you saying to them as a reminder?
If you feel like your individual impact is too small, I would still say keep implementing those things anyway, because it feels great to live in line with your values. You might not, empty the ocean with an eyedropper, or whichever analogy you want to use there. But within yourself, it still feels right to make those choices and make those changes that are in line with your values. And then the other thing that I would encourage is that your personal choices are always amplified if you use your voice alongside it. And I think our Speak Out to MP tool is a great way to do that. But how can you, within your own sphere of influence, do what feels right, and then take it a step further and maybe speak out to the brand or speak out to your local politician to really create change across the industry?
Love that. Okay, are you prepared to stick around? Because I got many more questions, but there's only so much we can squeeze into one episode. Can you stick around, Kat, and we'll
Let's
do it?
do it.
Yeah, we'll do another episode, because I have lots more from this podcast series that you've recently done that I want to go into. So I would love to hear your thoughts. We will put in the show notes where people can find the episode series, but perhaps just a quick reminder of what it's called and where people can find it.
That's right. So Behind the Barcode is the name of the series. It's on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. Produced in this lovely studio, but with a different colour background. And I sit down with Hannah, my co-host, to talk about ultra-fast fashion.
Amazing. And we'll get that link to that MP tool as well.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Kat, so much for being part of the first part of our discussion around fast fashion and ultra-fast fashion. Stick around and we will get into part 2. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you're at on this journey. What have you been doing differently? What have you tried? Where are you stuck? Where are you finding it really hard? I would love, love, love your insights either through the Facebook community with Money, 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 or you can DM me. I get so many nice DMs. Please be part of that. Jess Brady _financial advice on the gram. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. I can't wait to share the next one with you. You now know what to do. Go and be financially fierce. Bye.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the product disclosure statement, PDS, and target market determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Jessica Brady is an authorised representative of Paragem Pty Ltd, authorised representative number 1259972, AFSL 297276, ABN 16108571875, corporate authorised representative number 1305567.